Hi guys, I'm Re.
Hi, I'm Gabby.
Hi, I'm Sean.
Hi, I'm Esther.
And this is The Need to Know. So guys, we're back and it's the second time we're doing Young Minds in Politics with our wonderful co-host, Miss Gabby. And these are our two wonderful panelists. Let you introduce yourselves.
Oh, hi. Oh my God. So, I'm a graduate student at theneedtoknowshow College, getting my master's in public administration. Currently, I am working for the Attorney General's office in the Research and Analytics Department. And yeah, that's just a little spiel. I've worked in student government and SUNY, go SUNY, ooh, my own. But yeah.
I'm Sean again, former CUNY grad from John Jay, but now I'm studying international relations at NYU. I'm a former congressional candidate in New York 5. I lost. but we got the conversation going, right? I think one of the things that you can take away from the campaign is that we got a lot of young people talking about hot topics that a lot of us are talking about. So we got a movie going on, but I'm a political organizer at heart. So I do what I can to support other candidates within the community who have the best interests of the people. That's what I'm about. So thank you for having us on.
Thank you. So we're gonna talk about American Skin. And the writer and the main character, who was the father, I can't remember. Was he was military, but what was he? Marines. He was Marines, right? Yes. He was Marines, and he came back, and he had a son, blah blah blah, and he was on his way home. Just to give you some insight, he was on his way home, and with his son, they were driving back, and the son went to school, and he worked in that white neighborhood, and it was a so-called wealthier neighborhood, and they worked there, and he went to that school, and the white cop, him and his partner were patrolling to see what was going on, and he stopped him, and they got into an altercation, and the son started to run away, and he thought that the cop that shot him thought that he was getting his gun, so he shot him. So nothing happened to this cop now. Nothing happened to this cop, and this family is going through this, this crisis, and they feel how they feel, and people started to riot, and then the dad didn't know how to feel about it. So throughout this whole time, he doesn't know how to feel. He's trying to see. I feel like he was trying to see how to react for himself, and for him to cope with it. He acts out in this way that I feel like no one would ever do. I feel like that was the fictional part of it, but it was very realistic in terms of its dialogue. So now the cop, they have their little fake trial in the in the police station. Like, it was a little fake trial. They had their little jury. The jury was like the people that was in the police station, and some of the convicts that they had there. Right. This is super unrealistic. Like, it's super unrealistic. Because he kidnaps the police captain. And yes, and it's a black police captain. It's a black police captain. He kidnaps this black police captain, and he brings him back and says, everything is their hostage. He takes the whole police station hostage. So super unrealistic. But the meaning of it was to show his level of revenge that he wanted. So my question to you guys is, what is revenge for you? Like, how do you define revenge?
Actually, that kind of reminds me of John Q and Denzel. Remember that movie?
I don't remember that movie. I didn't watch it.
I definitely
John, that's a classic.
Okay, I'll watch it. I'll put it on my list.
So it's similar. I think it's always hard because as a parent, the perspective is different, right? I feel like, I don't think any of us here have kids, but I think that I could understand the anger and rage that a parent would have when a child is harmed, right? Like in John Q, for example. Like, I haven't seen American Skin, but I imagine in John Q, Denzel went on a raid. Like, he held a whole hospital hostage just because his son was dying. He needed like a heart transplant or something like that, and he didn't have insurance. But it was pretty resembling to what goes on, everyday people's lives. People have health insurance, and sometimes people get desperate, right? And then when you get desperate because you're not finding justice, or you're not finding any kind of help. So I could understand from parent perspective that you would go to extreme lengths to, get justice and do right for your child. So I get that. But for me, revenge. I feel like revenge for me really depends on what we're talking about, right? Like, I'm not a spiteful person, so I would never go out of my way to harm somebody. That's just not me. I like to just stay in my lane, do my thing, and in that way, I don't like to look at it as revenge, but it's just in the back of my head, like, all right, I outshined these doubters and haters, and that's good enough for me. So for me, that's, I guess, my perception of revenge. For me,
I know, like, unfortunately, we live in a country where you just can't go and kill anyone, like, Machiavelli, get an eye for an eye. And like you said, like, being a parent, I know, most of us aren't, but being in that situation, it's just like, your child was shot, like, what do you do? Like, your whole body is in a different mode. So you would go through any lengths to either whoever, killed your child to go kill them back. But that's something, one thing that I'm learning is, we all have our different paths of revenge. For me, I've had so many experiences in my career where it's like, I need to get revenge against this person or this corporation or this instance. And I'm just like, I need to be a lawyer. I need to go out and sue these people. But then, I read, like, yes, you go out and let's say you beat one case. You're just fighting that one situation. Like, this situation where you're killed by a cop, you killing that cop does not fix the entire, situation where, of course, police brutality, police killings is happening. It's not going to help the situation. So you have to think about it more in a macro perspective. How would you handle this situation where you're not only going to affect your personal encounter, but, on a bigger scale, you could influence many other people who have been through that situation. So that's kind of like my way of revenge is not being a lawyer, but let's say writing legislation where I not impact what I have been through, but to make sure that nobody else will go through that.
I'm glad you brought that up, because I feel like, we do have to look at the bigger picture when we're in the realm of politics as well. Politics, policy, etc. I had a thought, it's running away from me. But I think the important part here is remembering your purpose and remembering why you're here. Never forget your mission. Like, even though things happen to us, even though that happened to his son, I think it was more important for him to convey that, this is not the first time this happened. This is not the last time. Unfortunately, it's going to happen. We need to show that, police officers know what they're doing. Police officers are not unconscious when things are going on. So we need to make sure people are aware. We need to make sure people know how to behave not behave, but know how to handle these encounters going forward.
An important part to know about this movie as well is it was documented as it was going on. Like, the boy, there was a boy, probably, I think he was the friend. I can't remember if he was, like, he knew of the son. He knew the son, and he documented everything that was happening with the dad. So when this happened, he took the kids with him into the station, and they documented everything that happened. And when it was done, he said, like, I just wanted you to see I wanted you to document this because this is what is reality. Like, this is what is going on, and this is what these people feel. Like, these people who are convicts are telling you this is how they feel walking down the street, and you think that I'm doing bad just because the color of my skin. You profile me, and that's something that we're going to talk about, is like, you profile me just because I look like the next person or I fit the description that somebody said that. And it's like, that's not the reality that we should be living. It's like, I'm still a person. I might look just like this person, but that doesn't mean I'm this person. And in this scenario, they were racially profiled. They stopped him because they were black in that neighborhood at that time of the night, and it was because, why are you here? And that's what the cop said. He was like, why are you here at this time of the night? He's like, I told you, I work here. My son goes to the school here, and you just thought that it was okay to still stop me, and I'm telling you this is what's happening. They now, going into how cops are trained now, they're taught to profile you, and for what? Like, you're not, like, this is not your job. This is really not under your job description. You don't have the knowledge to profile somebody. So it's like, why Yeah, it did. It was like they looked at you like, oh yeah, we're taught to do that. But why are you taught to profile somebody? Like, and they go out, and all they see is the color of your skin. That you have tattoos, that you are in this neighborhood, that you work this place, that you don't have this, you don't have that. So how do you feel that cops are taught that and they actually do that, and you know they're implementing that every day, and you know you have to live that? Like, how do you feel about that as well?
So I was stopped and frisked when I was 16, 17 years old. So this is like Bloomberg's, I think, second or third term at this point.
Wow.
And you know, there was like a whole surveillance. And I come from like a really not conservative, but like really religious Muslim family. So there was like a whole surveillance of Muslims in the community. I had started just growing out my facial hair at this time, and I'm like, I was actually like really religious. Like I was into the Quran and everything. So I was going to the mosque, come home, and you know, I was doing my thing. But it was like around the summertime, and around the summertime, crimes tend to increase. So there was like a string of robberies in the neighborhood. And I remember, like the mosque was like a block away from where I live, and it was like late at night, walking home, and cops just stopped me because they were asking me if I you know was a part of this robbery, if I knew so and so that's part of the robbery. I'm like, no, I'm just I'm like no, and they helped me up like without any valid reasons, you know, and they without my permission went to my pocket, took out my wallet. Like all I had was my wallet. I didn't have any cash, all I had was my Metro card and my school ID, right? But they still held me there for like 30 minutes.
Oh my
and God. I remember, like vividly remember the one cop just had his hand like on his holster the whole time. I'm like, bro, like, you know, and at this time, you know, they were watching, and we know New York City, you know, it has a history of racial profiling of people of color, black people in general. And I remember like, I was starting to get into politics too, and learning about what was going on locally. And I knew that there was a surveillance of Muslims just because we're perceived as, you know, terrorists and yada, yada, yada. And in the back of my head, I'm like, are they gonna do something to me because I'm Muslim, you know? And I remember going home that night, and after that, like I stopped going out late at night. It shook me up for a while. And you know, so being profiled, you know, at that age is terrifying because that is a trend for Black Americans in this country, right? So when we look at the trauma that has happened in this country, and why a lot of people who don't really necessarily understand the pain and anger of why Black Americans feel the way they do, it's because of injustice like this, and it's, you know, they don't necessarily make the effort in trying to understand it, right? And when we look at the systemic issue of it, police, the institution itself, is built on racial profiling, it's built on, you know, quote unquote law and order. You know, they're out there to stop crime, but it comes with, you know, severe punishment. It comes with an aggressive attitude. It doesn't come. They're not built. They don't have the job. Their job is not to be a social worker. You know, they're not going out there to break up. And a lot of people don't know that a lot of calls that police get are domestic issues. You know, and they're not equipped to handle these situations. That is not their job. But what they do is they go there and they'll make the situation worse. So with policing itself, it's an institutional problem. And I remember someone had asked me too, because I'm pretty vocal about defunding the police and abolishing the whole system in itself, just because it's like we need to really pull back the whole layer and address. It's built on a whole you know, racial discrimination history in itself. It's built on slavery. So we need to address it, right? But I remember one kid hit me up on Instagram, was like, you know, do you think that the police can be retrained? And I'm like, honestly, no, I don't. There's no way. You know, it's built in their culture. This is what they do, and you know, we need to have people who are trained in social interactions with people, who know how to handle certain situations, right? So, and I think that there's a whole policing problem in this country that is multi-layered in so many ways.
And I have 3, you know, Black brothers, so every day they step out of the house, like, you know, I just have that feeling like this could be the last time that I see them. And, you know, with the whole George Floyd situation, like that really like triggered me a lot to just watch that video. And, you know, like you said, it's systemically embedded in our country. And, you know, just reforming, people always talk about reforming situations or acknowledging situations. I don't think that's gonna work. I think we need more transformative solutions. And like, you know, the whole defund the police movement, with that going on, like people don't agree. I think it's more of the message, like defunding, how it sounds. But I feel like if people were to actually look at ways where, you know, we could take money and put it into, like, you know, mental health counseling or having to fix the homeless issue. So instead of you calling the police to handle a domestic, you know, violent situation or getting a homeless person off the street, they have the resources there. You could bring a counselor, you could bring someone to help this person. And, you know, people that are so against defunding the police, they don't understand that aspect because they're so fixated on the term defunding the police. And, you know, of course, like New York City, with what's been happening, we have a lot of crime on the subway, we have a lot of crime happening, and people are so quick to be like, oh, y'all want to defund the police, but look at what's happening in these streets. I'm like, okay, but it's a much larger problem. And you know, it stems down to education as well. Like, a lot of people aren't educated on these things, so they're just quick to just put their opinion, and sometimes that opinion just discourages a lot of progression that needs to be happening. So unfortunately, we have that here. And, you know, to my brother's perspective, they are not as involved in these messages or politics as I am. So when I tell them, like, you have to be wary of the police officers, you have to watch what you say, watch what you do, they're like, no, like, I'm good, I'm not doing that, like, whatever. So they don't understand that, and I feel bad because, you know, at their age, you shouldn't have to be worrying about that. There's no reason why a 98-year-old woman makes me feel more safe than a police officer. Like, you know, I'd rather have grandma here than y'all here. Y'all not protecting me. Y'all just want to kill me. So, you know, it's hard to face that, and especially for Black men, I feel like it's much tougher because all you've seen as is a criminal. For what? You know, you don't know this person's background. And, you know, just like how Martin Luther King has said, like, you shouldn't be judged based on the color of your skin, but your content. But because of bias, and conscious and unconscious bias, we have these type of incidents where you're racially profiled, or before you even say a word, you're already judged. And, you know, it's just, what can you really do? So unfortunately, really unfortunately, I'm not a pessimistic, but I'm not pessimist, but I just don't know how we can fix this problem without, like, well, defunding the police and all of that. Do you train the police officers to, you know, treat them to see things differently? Individually, we all have our biases, and how would you rid that on all different levels? I don't have a solution to that. But yeah.
And like real quick, like actually, like a couple nights ago, I was part of this. I'm part of like this Eastern Queen Alliance group. It's just a bunch of community members coming together and voicing their opinions on what needs to be addressed in the community, right? And we were talking about policing in the neighborhood because there was like rising crimes in Jamaica, and she's an elderly lady. And, you know, I said, you know, we need to invest in more social programs, right? And she was saying how she, as an older woman, she feels unsafe going to a grocery store because there are, you know, kids hanging out in the corner. And like when you just mentioned about your brother, like he could be at the wrong place at the wrong time. Like, he doesn't recognize that, right? But sometimes he could be at the wrong place at the wrong time, and he may be taken as the wrong person, right? And the police may come at him. So, and that's something I had actually pointed out to him, like, you know, yeah, you may feel unsafe, but it's like, why are we putting the same kind of energy into addressing, making sure that these folks have, whether it's jobs, whether it's any kind of help that they need to not be in the streets? Why don't we put the same kind of energy, you know? Because of, like, we're spending $2 billion in NYPD, but we're constantly, year in and year out, like, slashing budgets on everything else. Housing, education, it just doesn't make sense, right? And she was like, you know, she was trying to play the middle ground here, where it's like, you know, yeah, she understands that there's a policing issue, that, you know, not all police are bad cops, but there are some bad cops. But it's like, I was sort of like, yeah, and that one night, that could be the bad cop, right? So, I think it does go with a lot of education, because this nuance of defunding the police, they just think, all right, we're just getting rid of the police. And that's not to say that there isn't a need for the police, because obviously there are like serial killers out there. That's a whole different level, right? But in terms of just like, we don't need stop and frisk. We don't need police addressing domestic issues, because by the time the police even gets to a situation, like, it's already done. It's dealt with, right? So we need to really evaluate this issue on so many different levels, but it's going to require a lot of just discussions like this.
I hope that lady knows that these social programs will resolve the issue that will keep these kids off the street. Like social, like a lot of these like grassroots organizations are starting programs like Safe Streets and Rockaway. There's also this one called Guns Down, Life Up. Yeah, like funding more of these programs will resolve both of the issues. I hope she knows that.
So, and I think that there's also not only a generational gap, but I think that there's an initial reaction to feeling that the police makes you feel safe, right? And that if something happens, the police will be there to protect you. When in reality, the people who feel safe, right? And it doesn't matter what race you are, but it's because you're either are privileged in some way, whether you have some wealth, whether you live in some gated community, doesn't matter, right? The fact that you even see it that way, that means you have some sense of privilege. And when we look at, when you look at addressing the policing in this country, we need to look at. I lost my train of thought. Sorry. I'm about to go on a rant. Come back to me in a second. Hold on. Come back.
I have a question about this. So one of the actors in the movie said, "How can you expect oppressed people to be American skin?" And that like resonated with me. So what do you guys think about that? Like he went on a whole rant, and I wish you guys watched it. I didn't take notes verbatim for what he said, but he said, you expect people to be decorated in patriotism, you bring them over in chains, etc. But what do you guys think? Like, what is your definition of American skin?
That was my question.
Yeah. Oh, that was your question?
Yeah, that was my question.
Okay.
No. I was gonna say answer that question, the first question you had, and then then define American skin.
Yeah.
Okay. You want to go first? I'm still trying to come in.
That's a good question. For me, I'm not an American. So it's interesting in that aspect because America is like built on this lie, and I just read like this James Baldwin book, and it was it just talked about this, like how can we overcome slavery and racism and Jim Crow without the people who control these institutions and have lifted them to institutionalize what we're talking about now, without America admitting that we did wrong to these people, not only Black people but also Native Americans as well, and we just continue to like you kind of put a band-aid over the problem instead of actually fixing the issue. And as we continue to live in this lie without no one ever acknowledging, the sins of America, I don't think we could ever move forward. And, I don't think Black people could, like, you want to be happy to say that I am a citizen of this country. And that's the thing with me, like, I don't want to become a citizen because this country, like, this is how you're going to treat me. Like, I'm less than. I thought this country was built on equality. And for this class I had, like, we had to read the Constitution and like the history of it and how these framers, wrote it and all of that. And all of them, people kept on asking like, what are we gonna do about slavery? And they're like, oh, okay, we could keep that out. We all equal though. And then, continue, oh, yeah, we're not equal. You could be 3/5 as a man or whatever. And I'm just like, wow, like this is what these people, but we continue to praise them. We continue to build monuments of them. And it's just like, this is why we can't get over the lie, because we just keep, not only are we lying to ourselves, we're lying to our children and, those that come after us. So to say that you're American skin, like I feel like there's so much ambiguity in that. Like I don't know. I don't want to say I don't know, but my subjective response to that is American skin. To be a Black American skin is to live in a lie that we are all equal in this country.
I remember what I was going to say. I was going to say regarding becoming the police, right? It's I think that we need to really talk about what that means for a lot of folks who don't really understand it, right? Mm-hmm. So it's just not taking away the police, but it's really allocating the investment into other stuff, right? That will uplift the community so that way we don't have to resort to the police.
Mm-hmm.
So, but regarding American skin, actually I was thinking about this to myself. I had an introspective moment last night thinking about this topic. I don't know, I I'm so conflicted with the idea, right? Just because imperialism, colonialism, slavery, right? It's so ingrained in helping America what it is today, right? This country wouldn't be where it is today without Black people, without Native Americans, without, without really just stealing land from other people, right? But at the same time, it's like, that's part of American history, unfortunately. But at the same time, it's like, for me, I was born here, right? And my parents came from Bangladesh, and at the time, they were coming from, to break it down real quick, they're coming from West Pakistan to East, and East Pakistan was supported by like democratic governments throughout the world trying to fight for liberation, but the West was supported by the US because they had vested interest, right, in protecting that region for themselves. And my dad was a refugee and all that, and eventually they came over here. But I was born here. My whole life this is what I've known. And I've had this conflicted moment because I feel like if you have some kind of melanin in your skin, you're always being placed in a box, right? You're placed in the box, and that people are trying to fit you into this box, that they have an idea of like who you should be, how you should act, how you should talk, what kind of music to listen to, or what you like, what you don't like. And it's, for me, it's like, I would just wish people, and when we look at the movie, for example, right, had the police known, rather than being aggressive, had they actually got to know the person behind the skin, get to know who he was as a person, as a human being. We don't have enough of that going on. And that's why when I get annoyed when people say, why do you gotta make it about race? It's because we need to address race. We have to. It's so integrated in everything just because of how this country has continuously marginalized, Black people and people of color. And it shows statistically. You talk about education levels, housing, you talk about, police brutality, it's there, so we need to talk about it. At the same time, it's like, I wish people would just like respect me for who I am as a person, right? Like, and I even get that within my own community too, because it's like, at times they feel like I'm not, Bengali enough, right? I'm like, what does that even mean? It's like, I need to accept and recognize for people who they are on the outside, but we also need to like really, get to know the person behind the skin, get to know who they are as a human being. And I was fortunate enough to go to a high school that was pretty diverse, and it was in Queens, but people were coming from all different parts from the borough in itself. Like they're from Jackson Heights, where there's like a lot of the huge Latino population coming from Southside Jamaica, and a lot of people of color coming. So, but it was just people just coming together and getting to know each other. And I feel like for me that was like such a humbling experience to have. A lot of people don't get that, And then when I step into the world of politics, it gets crazy. It gets crazy because we do need to address this. So it's been pretty interesting, but over time I just wish people would just treat Black people and people of color just for who they are rather than who they are on the outside of the skin.
So my next question is, we're gonna talk about what you want to talk about with what he said in the jury room, the fake jury room.
I love that jury. Oh my god.
So we'll do that first then. So one of the guys in the jury got shot, because was it the cop that took the gun?
Wait.
The guy, he was with the dad.
His uncle, right?
It was the uncle, right?
Yeah.
So, that part kind of confused me because I was like, how did that happen? But the uncle got shot, but he was in the jury. He was the one that was in the jury because he had to take his place.
Oh, I didn't know he was on the jury. Okay.
So the boy that was doing the documentary took place of one of the jurors, and he's biased because he knows the person. He's all right. So. And he said it. He's like, I'm biased, but he said a lot of good points. He said, because he was biracial, so his whole point, I'm gonna sum it up, was how am I supposed to be able to walk outside and I have to worry about my friend getting shot or me getting shot, or I have to worry about because I'm being looked at differently because I'm this person or I'm that person, or I can't get this or I can't be that, and I can't have the resources that I need to have for me. But yeah, you want me to sit here and not be scared of you. And I think that that his speech in general just spoke out and made people like find the cop guilty. I thought that it was going to be very like a slide case, like they didn't really know he was guilty or not. but they all thought about it as, you know, he didn't give this person the opportunity to defend himself. He just went and jumped and shot because he thought something, because police officers are taught to be scared. Like, they're taught to just, let me pull my weapon out because you're black, or because I feel offended. And it's like, why should you be scared? Because I'm the one that's walking the street and you stopped me.
Exactly.
And that was something that they were talking about. And it's like, how do you feel that, you know, violence is just, they fight violence with violence. There's always violence. It's never like, you know, we're gonna stop, talk about this. It's never, you know, I'm just gonna take you and we're gonna talk. It's never that. So how do you feel like violence is always pinpointed with violence? And it also goes to my other question, so we can answer it together. How do you feel about how riots is always the solution to most things? Like, we always have to riot. It's always something. Why do you think that violence is going to outweigh violence, or do you feel like there should be other necessary actions to be put in place in terms of that? Because, you know, I see him and I'm just like, what? What you wanted to say?
Yeah.
Oh, you're going to answer the question? I got you. But my question is all together with that in terms of violence. It's like, how do you see violence? Should violence be at the top of everything? Should that be the solution? Or should we be working for a different solution?
Oh, I was gonna say real fast. Like, I saw this documentary about Tupac like a while ago, and he was saying how it's not that black people choose violence; it's just that violence is our last option. It's like, if, say for example, you go to a store. I mean, not a store, but like, it's like when black people are like banging on the door, like, please help us. But then the white people turn it down, and it's like, okay, ask again. And you turn it down again, and it's like the third time, please, like, just give us our civil rights. But then they don't give us that. It's like, eventually you get to a point where it's like, okay, now, like, being nice and being actual is not working, so let me turn to violence. And so I feel like black people, I feel like that's why we have that image of like terrifying thug criminals, is because you made us this way. Kind of, you know, it's like, what other choice do we have? Like, if we're nice, we don't get what we want or need. And so I understand that violence isn't always the answer, but it's like, if you look at the majority of American history, black people got what they wanted or what they actually been asking for through violence. So I mean, it sucks, but at the end of the day, like, it's what we have to do in order for, you know, the white man above to actually hear what we're talking about.
What most people don't get is that they feel like people who are protesting against injustice, like, want to do that, you know? It's not because we want to, it's just there's no other choice, right? It's necessary because, you know, for so long, that, to your point, Shamar, is that this is not like the first time this happened. It's been going on repeatedly, and there's been a fight for civil rights, but it was like you only get like a piece of the pie, because now we're still dealing with so many other injustices, right? There's income inequality, there's health inequality, environmental racism. A lot of this still hasn't been addressed, and that's still due to America just not giving a fuck, right? America not giving a fuck, right? So it's necessary, and, you know, and there's folks who compared what happened in DC last month to, you know, Black Lives Matter movement. Like, you know, they'd be like, I'm sure you've heard it, right? Like, I'm pretty sure you've heard it. Like, oh, but, you know, Black Lives Matter or Antifa, they're, you know, like, it's completely different. People need to understand that it's completely different because, you know, Black Lives Matter and, you know, all the other organized protesters are fighting for something that has been fought for, you know, that's been on the line for ever. You know, this is, you're going down for Fred Hampton, for Martin Luther King, Malcolm X. Like, these are folks who've been fighting on the front lines forever, and this is just a new era of it. And what happened in DC was, you know, they're just going there to try to uphold white supremacy. It's a completely different topic, right? So for this to happen, yeah, it's necessary, because if fear is gonna help you understand what we're talking about, then yes, it's necessary. Like, if that's what it comes down to, then yes, it's necessary. Because you know what, whether or not you disagree or agree, it's got people talking. You know, people were not talking about Black Lives Matter as much as they did, even when Michael Brown, Trayvon Martin, right? It was just starting. But it wasn't as hot of a topic now, and it's because year after year, and unfortunately, it had, you know, with so many black people dying at the hands of the police, protests had to continuously, they needed to happen. You know, these rights needed to happen because people were just not getting it. And it came to the point where, yeah, you know what, if it means that we're gonna destroy the glass door of like Target, you know, like these billionaires, white billionaires who are already making billions of dollars already, like I don't give a fuck about the property. You know, I don't care about my brothers and sisters losing their lives. Like that's more important. Like human life is more valuable than that glass door that can be replaced easily.
Exactly.
Right? If that's what it takes, then yes, absolutely. Like these rights need to happen until people just get it. But it's got people talking, and that's what's most important. Black Lives Matter topic, like I remember reading a poll not long ago that the approval rating has been slowly, gradually increasing, and it's because people are doing the research, people are starting to get it now, slowly, you know, but it's heading in the right direction. So,
if you notice that all the protests and like, riots, I guess, by black people, if you notice a pattern, black people at most, like he said, would break like a Target glass door. Whereas white people do one riot because apparently Biden wins the presidency. you go damage a whole government property that is the same government you're asking to protect you. So to me, it's like, how are we the violent ones when at most we're walking down streets holding signs, not bothering anyone, but white people are damaging the property that you call American government
and
are still seen as the good ones.
And not once, you know, even with the Million Man March, right? Millions of black men marched in DC, not single one that marched into Congress, the White House. Not one, right? So it's crazy to think that America has this perception that black people are violent when you have these white supremacists heading into Capitol, and they had intention of harming, not just destroying property. They had intention of like killing and harming and
hanging people.
So when protesters protest, they have a necessary agenda to protest, right? And they just make their voices loud and for people just to talk. And they're not going there with the intention of harming people. So I think people, if viewers out there, I'm sure y'all are good people, but if you don't get it, I hope you get it.
I just want like white people to understand. Like imagine having to live 400 years of your life, like reaffirming that, you know, we're just people like of different skin colors or whatsoever. And, you know, after all these years of having to reaffirm our civil rights, it's been, 1965, look how many years it's been, and we're still reaffirming those rights. Like, we're tired. It's just like you have your siblings where you tell them not to touch something, okay, they continue to do it. Sometimes you just gotta hit them, like, stop touching my shit, you know? And it's crazy when white people do it. Like, you know, you see what happened with Black Wall Street. They burned down an entire community, and it's just like, it just go past whatever, on to the next, what's happening the next day, like, what am I gonna eat for breakfast? When black people do it, you know, we burn down something. It's just like these are criminals, these are violent, they're looting, they're stealing, and it's just like, wow, that's when you see how we're treated different.
To really understand how America still hasn't addressed race, and you know, we need to talk about race, and we can look at the need for reparations. The fact that America hasn't even apologized, let alone, right?
Exactly.
The reparations is one thing, but the American government has yet to even apologize, recognize that, you know, what they did was sinful and it was just atrocious. That has not happened. You know, when look at throughout the world when there's been genocide, there's been civil wars, right, against other populations that were minorities in that country. You know, we could look at South Africa, we could look at Rwanda. There's been some kind of reconciliation, right? Or even with Japan, President Obama at the time, like he apologized for what happened in World War II to Japan, right? It took a black president to apologize. But you're talking about 40-something other white presidents couldn't do that.
Yeah.
So even to this day, America has still yet to acknowledge like the history and these textbooks that, you know, kids are learning in school. Like that's just like touching the surface. You know, it's not even going deep into everything else that has happened. So yeah, I think that even when we look at reparations, it just tells you that it alone just tells you that America has no interest in addressing race right now.
To go back to the point about protests and riots, I like to live by this saying. Like, I don't consider myself an organizer, protester. I consider myself a people organizer because I like policy. So I think that a lot of the protests that were happening over the summer, some of them were not purposeless, but they were purposeless at the same point, because you can't protest without a purpose. You can't protest without having a plan afterwards. Some of them were just pop-ups, basically.
Push up.
Yeah, like, I'm just like, we have to be doing this for a reason, because this gives people another reason to look down upon us, or just to neglect what we want, or just to diminish or push it to the side. So one thing I would say, and someone else told me, like, you know, you should kind of have an open mind when it comes to protests, because that is their form of, that is certain people's form of, like, you know, expression. And I get that, but we need to have a plan. We need to be organized when we protest.
I agree. And, you know, just all the Black Lives Matter protests and movements that happened this past summer and still going on, I had to ask myself, okay, y'all protesting all these days, all these weeks, what's the end goal? Like, you know, we trying to pass legislation here? What we trying to do? What's the outcome of all of this? And it's just like, did y'all just march 4 months for nothing? Like, are you serious? Like, come on.
It's crazy you say that. So we're both from Jamaica, right? So there was a BLM rally shortly after the murder of George Floyd this past summer, and it was like the first rally that happened in Jamaica in probably like a very, very long time, right? But it was great to see people coming together, rally around this issue. But then it's like, all right, people get dispersed, go back to regular lives. These politicians come out for these photo ops to go back to regular lives. And now there's a discussion with the community about getting a new police precinct. But it's like, yo, last summer we just had a whole rally about police injustice, and now you want to have a discussion about possibly bringing a new police precinct? Like, try to make it sense.
You're referring to the 116 precinct, right?
The 116 precinct, yeah.
Make it make sense.
Right? And on top of that, there's already 2 police precincts in the neighborhood that have a bad track record of violating human rights of people that they, detain in their jails. So it's like, it just doesn't make sense. And our communities are already suffering from the pandemic in itself, that exacerbated poverty, that exacerbated, the need, mental health, people losing their jobs, small business, healthcare has been huge. Like, even at St. John's Hospital, right, in Rockaways, it's overcrowded.
Yep, they need more resources. I mean, what was the new, I think they were planning to cut St. John's down to like a 15 bed hospital.
Yeah.
And I know that, like, they halted those plans because that's the only hospital in Rockaway, but those plans were halted, thankfully. I don't know when it's going to resume. Hopefully it doesn't. But yeah, like, we're in a whole pandemic. Why would you take the only health care facility in a neighborhood out? Like, why would you, like, limit those resources? It's crazy.
It doesn't make sense.
At all.
It doesn't make sense.
Okay, so speaking of all this, we need the right people in office. We need the right public officials representing us, speaking up against other public officials. And 2021 will be a big year for New York City. So what do you guys think of the mayoral candidate list so far? And do you think there's someone out there that's going to represent marginalized communities that, to the ability that they need to?
Oh, for me, I know, like, I just seen a poll where, like, Andrew Yang is, like, leading, and it kind of, like, pisses me off because this man does not know anything about the city, like, whatsoever. And the fact that he wants to use his name recognition in order to get elected and, use the city probably as a puppet to implement his $1,000 income thing. Like, for you to be mayor of New York City, I want that person to be able to understand what it's like to be a New Yorker, to live in such a diverse community and, have to deal with the most pressing issues that are happening right now. And he is definitely not one of them. Like, I was reading something where he was on the A train and he was talking about how he's Bronx bound. The A train, does the A train go to the Bronx? And you could just see it from right there. There's no authenticity in it. And, I hopefully he doesn't win. And then to see the other candidates, I mean, I know, like, Scott Stringer, who's been a comptroller, he doesn't, like he's not giving me that feel of what New Yorkers, what we need right now. And then I also read an article about all these people that are running, and I looked at where they live. Like, they live in these $1 million homes, and have all these money and capital influence or whatsoever, and that just kind of scares me, because it's just like, y'all not gonna know what it's like to not be able to pay rent, not having to send your child into school districts with no lack of resources. Like, they don't know what it's like. Yes, they can talk about it, they can get input from New Yorkers about how it feels, but in order for you to sometimes for you to actually go out and fix a situation, you have to understand what it's like to have lived in this situation. And I know some of them, they probably grew up in poverty in the city. I think Eric Adams has, but other than that, these candidates, they're not giving me what what New Yorkers need. And hopefully, I love our Attorney General, Letitia James. I think she should definitely run. I know she would have to leave, her current position right now, but to me, and just, we're currently working with her, she gives me more of what New Yorkers need. We need someone who's gonna fight for this, fight for rent control, fight for better education, fighting the homelessness issue, all these things. I need someone who's gonna actually get it done and live up to the name of what it is to be a real New Yorker.
You pretty much took the words out of my mouth. I just feel like all these candidates are just so not authentic. I've seen, you can't say enough about Yang, but even with, I remember watching this billionaire, Ray McGuire. I'm not sure if you saw this ad, but he had this announcement video of him. It was a video opening of him jogging in Times Square in Jordan 12s. And I'm like,
oh my God.
But in Jordan, he's jogging Jordans.
Come on.
That's what hurt me. I'm like, he's trying so hard to relate to New Yorkers.
Oh my gosh. Where's he from? He's from
upstate, I think.
Oh wow.
Yeah. Or upstate or some other, I forgot where. But he's not from the city. Right? But it's he has advisors that are trying to make him so hard to relate to New Yorkers. But it's you don't have to necessarily try so hard, Be yourself.
Effortless.
I feel like you can be yourself, and for me that's enough. You don't necessarily have to be from New York per se, just from the city. I appreciate that, we need, for me, experience does matter. Not just your political experience, but your lived experiences. So even if you're a candidate that's running for New York City Maine, but from upstate or a different state, you don't have to try so hard to relate. Be yourself, so that stuff like that just is annoying. But I like Diane Morales. She's an Afro-Latina. She knows what it's like to live in poverty. Her and I connected pretty close, and I feel like she's running a grassroots campaign that's built on building a movement, right? And for me, I appreciate that a lot. So I like her as my number one. But other than that, I really don't like anyone else.
Nobody, yeah.
And it's so hard with this ranked choice voting, this new system of voting. We don't have to pick 5 candidates, but it's good that we have that option. I guess that gives people a leg up and I personally don't understand ranked choice voting myself. So if you guys know more about it, you can feel free to educate me. I know there's certain neighborhoods or districts where you have to get a certain percentage to even run in the primary. But yeah, none of these mayoral candidates are. Maya Riley, if I'm, that's her name.
Maya Wiley.
Wiley, yes. See, I'm not pronouncing her name right, but she's a potential, but I still have to learn more about her policies.
I want to like her.
You want to like her, but you don't I feel like she's just there. What?
I don't know. For me, Maya, she's trying so hard to play the middle game, but we're living in a time, I feel like we can't play the middle game anymore. And I think that's what's hurting Biden. I'm sure we'll get into that. But it's either you're going to be fighting for the people, with the people, or are you going to be on the side of the oppressor? Right? There's no way of really bringing these two groups together. We can't do that anymore. We've done that for so long, and it's just kept us back. And I feel like when I remember watching Maya speak at some of the forums, she was hesitant on criticizing Cuomo, de Blasio. She was unsure about Medicare for all. I'm like, come on.
Like, what is gonna happen to you if you call these public officials out? Yeah, you won't get their support again. You won't get their money, but there are people out there that will believe in you. Like, if you are willing to stand up against the establishments that exist, there are people out there that will support you. It's crazy, and the same goes for like all these city council candidates. I feel like everyone is running. Everyone is running in every district. Who's running in y'all districts?
So this guy, Ruben Willis, he just got out of jail.
Everybody was hurting.
The thing was, he was the previous council member from my district, right? And then he went to jail, I think, for money laundering or aggravated assault. It was one of them. So he went away for a minute. Yeah, laundering. So he was gone for a minute, and he just came back, and now he's running against my rep, who's Adrian Adams, and she's been there for like a few years now. But yeah, he's coming back on the scene, and now it's just him and her, so that's what we got. But I know in other districts, it's just crazy. It's like 10 candidates running everywhere.
Yeah.
So you guys live in the same, I don't know if you guys
Yeah, I think we
Yeah.
have the same rep.
okay. So y'all feeling any of the candidates, or y'all don't really know?
No, that's it.
Oh, that's
the
only one
only-
person?
Yeah, for that race, it's just that one dude who's running, and you know she's relatively liked in the community, so you know, so I'm sure she'll be fine.
So in my district, everyone is running. We just had a special election. I live in District 31. I volunteered with Manuel Silva's campaign, so I was hoping he would take the seat. Unfortunately, it didn't plan out that way, but great run. So we had, it's not over yet. Still, it's not over. But we had like a whole array of candidates. We had establishment-backed candidate. We had a Jewish candidate. I don't remember his accolades. I think he worked with the comptroller's office. We had other candidates, and I've never heard of them before. Right? I've never ever heard of them.
Who are the other candidates besides Manny, Solina? I think Opash, right? That's a Jewish candidate. Pesach.
Something like that.
I hope we're not offending.
Yeah, I
the Jewish
apologize.
out there.
I apologize for the mispronunciation, but yes.
I think it's Pesach.
Yes. Yes. That.
Good one.
But I haven't heard of any of the candidates, but I'm glad people are getting involved. We just I don't know, I'm at loss for words, because right now, the community isn't going to get exactly what we need. I'm trying to say this without
No,
offending.
let's be real.
Oh my God, he's a troublemaker.
Come on, we New Yorkers. We all tell it how it is.
All I can say
Whisper
is,
to the audience.
all I can say is I hope that District 31 changes for the better, and I hope whoever is elected in that city council seat does live up to what it's supposed to. Fights for our community, fights for all the resources.
What she's trying to say is, we are watching you. We got you on check. If you get out of line, we're coming back.
Yes, Sean.
So, thank you guys for coming. I enjoyed you guys. I hope you guys enjoyed us. Like, it was,
Of course.
Please, if you guys want to share your social media or like your platforms, any platform that you want to share, please do so.
So I'm like taking a break from social media right now, but I still have Instagram. You could follow me at se3ss.jo. And also my LinkedIn. My name is Esther Joseph. You know, if you want to follow me, connect, please go ahead and do so.
And you can find me on Twitter and Instagram. So Twitter is my first name, SHANIYAT 2020. And then my Instagram, same thing, but without the 2020. It's just my first name .chy. Yesterday I actually just spoke about legalizing marijuana. Had a whole discussion about that and diversity in cannabis, because New York State is actually, you know, it's going to be up next, right, to talk about legalizing cannabis. But now we got to look at it from a racial and social and economic justice perspective, because that needs to be included, right? If we're going to be talking about legalizing cannabis, like people of color, Black people need to be included in the discussion. So,
And our wonderful co-host for this evening, guys.
Hi guys, I'm Gabrielle. If you want to connect with me, I have Instagram, G.E.R.E.E.E.L. LinkedIn, Gabrielle Bennett. Twitter, The Gabby Show without a W. Hit me up if you're interested in working together on policy, campaigns, stay connected, stay tuned. I'm not, missing big time. I enjoyed you guys. Thank you to the Need to Know for having me.
Yes, and I think this is our continuous segment. This is our second time doing it, and we're going to continue to do it. So if you guys would love to be a guest again, we are happy to have you. This is something that, young people do need to be a part of, especially people of color. And I think that, this is getting voices out there, especially our voices. So this is the start of that, just like you were saying earlier. And I think that we have a greater impact in doing it from a lower level first and building up from that way. That's something that I do want everybody to know as well. But as always, guys, you can follow me on Instagram and Twitter. It's Re the Host. And make sure you follow me on Instagram. The Wonderful Shows page on Instagram and Twitter. It's TNTK Show. Thank you for watching the show.
And that's all you need to know.